Kpop Demon Hunters is one of those films that I firmly underestimated. When I first saw it being advertised on Netflix, I was firmly in the camp. I didn't particularly care and hadn't intended to actually watch the movie. I didn't think I was particularly in its target audience, and I didn't think I'd actually enjoy it. I must admit though, I was very wrong in that assumption, as a couple of weeks after its debut, I still had people in my comment section asking me to watch the movie and to give my thoughts on it. Enough people to make me realize that this is probably something I should look into. So I sat down to watch it, and what do you know? It was awesome. Truly awesome. It had great visuals, epic action sequence, top-tier voice acting, a masterful and catchy soundtrack, and a fairly good story. I did have some issues with the narrative side of things, but regardless, I think it's safe to say, the film is my favourite animated film of the year. You know what? Scratch that. Favourite film of the year. I just had so much fun watching it and had a smile on my face pretty much the whole time. Then there's that earworm soundtrack that just stays in your head forever and ever. I found myself coming back to it again and again on repeat, especially Golden. Love that song. Of course, as is the usual when you finish a film that you really like, there's always that question. Is that it? Are we done? Or is there potential for more? Just from the business side of things, which in the end is the only way to judge whether a studio is actually going to go all in on something or not, I think the franchise deserves a sequel. I mean, since it was a made-for-Netflix release, obviously it's harder to have a concrete number that you can point at and say, oh look, here's the proof the franchise deserves a sequel. It earned over $1 billion off a budget of 10 cents or something along those lines. However, we do have that Netflix top 10, which can probably help us out a little bit. Okay, so when you go and look at that Netflix top 10, you can see that it has done extremely well for itself and captured a very large audience. When you look at the numbers, both Sony and Netflix could not view this movie as anything other than an overwhelming success. Since its debut on the 20th of June, it stayed in the Netflix top 10 for 3 consecutive weeks, which is no mean feat. I was especially impressed by its first week, where despite only having 2 days left for data to be recorded when it was released, it still secured the second top spot. Got 9.2 million views, not too shabby. However, in the weeks since, it's only continued to grow and grow. In its second week, it ended up taking the top spot with 24.2 million views, and once again dropped to second in the subsequent week, but only dropping to 22 million views. It only got displaced because there was a new action movie that released that dropped monster numbers for its first week. I guess I'll have to wait and see for its fourth week, but my gut tells me it's in for an extended stay in the Netflix top 10 because it has insane rewatchability, and the fan base just seems to keep growing and growing as more people become aware of it. Really, when you think about it, the concept is one of the best modern animated ideas ever conceived, considering just how popular K-pop has become over the course of the last, 10, 15 years. It's just so massive these days all across the globe, and so it was really a spectacular idea that's paying off in spades. Not to mention, not only does it have a very wide viewership, but it's also just a top tier movie. You can see that by taking a look at its approval ratings online. A 95% critical score and a 90% audience score, up from 89 when I made my first video talking about the movie. So clearly the world at large approves of this film and would have the appetite for more. I mean, for God's sake, one of the big takeaways in the comments of my video on the movie was legitimately just people being upset they'd made cuts to the original film because there were other plot points they wanted to explore more in detail. For a lot of people, I think this would be in the form of the main romance that was being built up between the leads. They have a lot of romantic tension across the movie, and it feels like it was building to something, and then he dies. I mean, from what I've read, they did cut a kissing scene somewhere, and maybe a date. That might not be accurate, but it's what I've heard. Plus, there are just a lot of parts of the world building and the character backstories that I feel need to be explored in a lot more depth, right? I can think of a few off the top of my head, but we'll get to those in a little bit. So we can see that from a business point of view, it makes sense for Sony and Netflix to want to come back for round 2, considering how well the first film's doing. We can see that there's definitely an appetite for more content from the audience, and even when you look at the statements from the filmmakers themselves, you can see that desire to continue with the franchise. The director did say the film has a lot of questions that weren't answered fully that could be explored in sequels or side stories. Okay, so now we gotta brainstorm some ideas, right? How do you take the first film and continue that story? After all, it did seem rather definitive right there at the end. Guimar gets locked away, and the honeymoon seals the demons up forever. It would be pretty cheap and anticlimactic to suddenly change that, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be pretty funny, but you gotta wait at least one movie before you do that. Otherwise, it feels like this. Remember that time you thought you sealed me away forever and I straight up killed your romantic interest, but at least you ensured that humanity would be protected forever? Oh wait, I'm back, sucked in! For a first sequel, it would massively trivialize the ending of the movie to simply go back to the well like that. Thus, I kind of think that if you go forward in any way, you need a fresh villain the heroes can face. At the same time, it's got to be a demon, right? Hence the name Kpop Demon Hunters. If you suddenly pivot away from that perspective and have a brand new type of villain, it's not really Kpop Demon Hunters anymore, is it? You can't change the title to exclude that anymore. Kpop Demon Hunters is now the brand name. Everything that follows needs to play off that vibe. Imagine if instead of Kung Fu Panda 2, we got Kung Fu Tiger. That would not have had nearly the same interest if you're moving away from part of what made the franchise popular to begin with. It's why when they had that Karate Kid film in 2010 starring Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan, which is an absolute classic film by the way, don't listen to the haters, it's why they still called the film The Karate Kid, despite the fact that it's about Kung Fu. I don't even think they mentioned karate at all within the film, and yet they never titled it The Kung Fu Kid. Why? Because nobody's going to see a film called The Kung Fu Kid. They want to see The Karate Kid. That had the weight of nostalgia behind it. The film was only 25 years old at that point. It's like making a Harry Potter remake in this day and age, when the first film's only close to 25 years old, and not calling it Harry Potter. You've got to capitalize on the nostalgia of adults, but especially the young adults that grew up on the movie. This is why the film has to always be about a singing trio of demon hunters. IP is important in this day and age to draw the masses. It needs to be recognizable, and so they need to use that name again and again and again. Slap a number or add a colon and a secondary title to set it apart from the other movies, and you're golden. So we've established the likely way to go forward is to have some random ass demon, likely a very powerful one, somehow escape getting locked into the demon world, and thus the hunters need to go after them and kill them and stop their threat to the world once and for all. Ooh, if you want maximum drama, then maybe make it a way to kill two birds with one stone. Make it into a sequel, prequel type deal. I don't think they should ever go for a full prequel because another big draw in the franchise, it's the girls, the trio, the leads. They're super popular in the fandom now, especially Rumi, and by going into prequel territory, you 100% are limiting the film. You no longer have the big name heroes, and so the new characters in the film are going to be up against it from the get-go because they will always get compared to the original. Especially since, the only decent idea for a prequel comes in the form of telling the story of Rumi's parents. But since they both end up dead at the end most likely, with their daughter being raised by the mum's emotionally unavailable friend who partially thinks Rumi shouldn't be alive at all, I think that story would be way too much of a bummer. The original film is fun and quirky and very upbeat. Yes, there are moments of darkness and sadness, but nothing to the level of the main romantic pairing both straight up dying and their daughter having a somewhat sad, lonely upbringing where she can never fully connect with her friends because she's taught from the beginning to follow the Elsa school of thought, keeping a distance between yourself and everybody else. So no prequel. At least no full prequels. Having flashbacks within your sequel to showcase key information? I'm all for that. So anyway, as I was saying, a prequel-sequel combo type of thing where it pushes the story forward and yet is also able to tie off some of those loose ends the first film had. Answer some of the questions that have been raised. And here are some that I think they could and should address. 1. So Rumi's half demon. From what I understand, her mum, Celine, and somebody else were in their own K-pop group and were the generation's incarnation of the Demon Hunters. So the mum ends up in a relationship with the demon and she gets pregnant. What's going on here then? We have a story you can form out of this, right? Just earlier, I said for a future film, you need a demon that was not locked away through some plot contrivance that you can just make up. It doesn't really matter, you can easily explain it away. Somehow, the demon hunters find out that there's a random demon still out there. Maybe Celine tells them or something, I don't know. So off they go to hunt this dude down and finish off the demon menace once and for all. And I guess he probably runs away. Maybe he talks to them a bit as well. And through discussions, we learn, surprise, surprise, this guy's Rumi's dad. You could incorporate flashbacks to him and the mother and how they fell in love and how it all fell apart and she died and I guess he pulled a runner. Maybe Celine chases him away or something. Then here you can go in one of two ways. The first way is that this guy turns out to be a massive piece of shit that was using the mother and doesn't care about her or Rumi. This would just make him a rather black and white villain of the story, and of course it would end with him dying horribly and the friends standing tall once more. But I still don't know about this because in the end it's not like this gels with what we know. The reality is that based on the context we have from the film, it is kind of implied that Rumi's parents would have had actual, genuine feelings for one another. For starters, I think they're probably meant to be a reflection of Rumi and What's-His-Face, but this time, it could have the opposite result, with the demon surviving and the hunter dying and leaving him behind. On top of that, we know that right from the get-go, the demons all know who the hunters are. That is made very clear considering how they always know where to go and hunt for them, and thus it would have likely been the same for the previous generations, and therefore, Rumi's dad would have surely known who she was at the time of the romance. On top of that, the hunters are shown to expertly be able to figure out who a demon is with ease. They figure it out on the private jet at the start of the movie, and they also figure out the boy band are all demons during their public performance, where they're able to glimpse their markings. So surely there's no chance that you're going to get all the way to the stage of giving birth to this dude's child, without knowing who and what he is. Same thing for the demon. If he was actually legitimately a bad guy, surely there were many perfect opportunities to kill this lady before it got to this point. The idea, of course, being that he's somehow manipulated her into thinking that he's a good demon, with a plan of killing her when she least suspects it. Seems a bit too committed to the bit to take it all the way to getting her pregnant and her giving birth, if you ask me. Like, doesn't Guimar keep an eye on the demons that are interacting with the hunters? He certainly did for Jinu. Would he not have been a bit perturbed by the fact that this guy is straight up having sex with a demon hunter and yet still hasn't found the time to cut her throat? That's why I think there has to be something more going on. I could see Celine having discovered them and freaking out, which leads to the mum's accidental death in some sort of scuffle. and then this coming out over the course of the sequel. It allows you to explain the half-demon side in a way that makes sense, and doesn't seem goofy, and also continues to showcase the damaged relationship Celine and Rumi have. They really didn't take enough time to show that off in the original film, and that's something that I'd like to see differently this time around. I think that could be a very fun and powerful idea for a sequel. To be honest, I'm sure that you could take the franchise in any single direction, and it would work as long as you stay true to the characters. There are so many ways to take the story. Maybe Ginu returns somehow. How? Who knows? Who cares? That's up to the screenwriters. Maybe they have to enter the demon world for some reason. Maybe there are other demons from other cultures that need their asses whooped on a Huntrix world tour. Hell, you could even do a 20-minute short film spin-off with the tiger and the magpie if you wanted to. And so now I'll throw it to you guys. As after all, these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. Do you think that Kpop Demon Hunters deserves a sequel film? If so, what's your idea for how they should continue? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.